everybody, this is Matt with Snake River Fly here. I guess there's two Matts that are tying for us here. So I'm Matt Buck. Today we're going to be tying a dirty hipster, size 14. It's a European style jig hook in the vise. It's been fishing pretty well all over southeast Idaho. Spring creeks, freestone streams. Brandon here at the shop, he's even been catching carp on it with a thicker hook. So in the vise, I've got a Moonlit size 14 jig hook with a 2.5 slotted tungsten bead, also from Moonlit. It's really cool hot yellow color. Seems to be getting the picky fish to take when nothing else is working. So we'll get started here. Going to start off with some 020 lead wire. With the tungsten bead, it's probably going to sink okay in slower water. Faster water, I like to add a little bit of weight just to get the fly down quicker. These slotted tungsten beads seem to sit on these jig hooks just a little bit better, and they're actually, I've heard they're a little heavier than just the standard countersunk style bead. So I use the slotted tungsten on here. Right behind that bead, I'm going to give it about 6 or 7 wraps of lead wire. Gonna do the old helicopter to break it off. I just kind of use my fingernail, wiggle the back there to break the back tag off. You can actually kind of mush that wire up inside that bead a little bit, and that kind of helps keep it right on top there. The thread I like to use is a Simperfly Nano Silk 50 denier. Just a lot stronger thread. You can really put some pressure on your thread wraps. I've gotten so used to tying with it that I can hardly use your standard threads anymore. The one drawback to it is it's kind of slippery on the hook when you're starting out. So one little trick is if you can lick your fingers to get kind of a better grip on the thread there. See, just slipped off on me. So you're going to start that thread right behind those lead wraps. Build up a little bit of a bump to keep that in place. And this is a barbless hook, so we're just going to wrap it back to where the barb would normally be, right there to the point of the bend. First material I'm going to tie on is a cocktail leon tail. I can't pronounce the name of that color, but it's kind of a rusty yellow color, which I like on this fly. It just kind of matches the yellow rib and the yellow head a little better. So I've got one feather here. Just going to pick about 6 or 7 fibers off of there. Just kind of pull those fibers back. So you don't want a super long tail here. I would say maybe 2/3 of the length of the shank of the hook here. Just going to size that up, put that on the back there. Pinch that off with my other hand. I pinch it pretty tight because these cocktail leon fibers tend to be a little slick. I like cocktail leon. It's a durable fiber. Holds up a little better on rocky bottoms, and after you've caught a few fish, it just tends to hold up a little better. So you just kind of pinch it off pretty tight, wrap that back forward till the lead starts there. Snip off the tag. Gonna wrap through that lead wire to really secure it down. Right here where the lead starts or stops, I'm going to tie in my ribbing. And for that, I'm just using ultra wire, hot yellow color. It just matches the bead, kind of ties the whole fly together here. That is the brassy size there. So I'm just going to place that, kind of hold it next to the hook. It tends to want to pop out on you a little, so just be careful with the first couple wraps over the top. You really want to make sure you secure that wire down well. So right now what we're going to do is build up a little bit of a taper. We're kind of looking for a little bit of a carrot shape here. You can get the same effect with your dubbing. It just kind of helps the process along. If you build up a little bit of a bump behind those lead wraps, just makes for a cleaner looking bug in the end here. The next material, just going to use a standard natural colored hare's ear dubbing. I think Hairline Dubbing is who makes this one. I just have the 12 pack here. When I'm working with dubbing, I like to start out with just a thin little noodle. You don't want a ton right on the tail. Like I said, we're trying to build up a taper on the body here, and if you start off with a big clump, it's just going to make one big bump right here on the tail. So you want to start out kind of light, and you can work your way up towards the front. With dubbing, less is definitely more. It's easier to add just little bits at a time and kind of build up the body as you go, rather than putting too much on and then you're fighting to try to get a good smooth taper. So small amounts here. Okay, so we want to leave a little bit of a gap there right behind the bead. We're going to put some rubber legs in and a thorax right behind the bead there. So we want to leave ourselves a little bit of a gap. We don't want to build up too much bulk right there. With the wire, any fly I'm tying, I like to counter wrap. You could wrap forward, but the wire tends to sink down in between the wraps of dubbing that I put there. If we counter wrap it, it tends to stay on top a little better and the ribbing's a little more visible. So we just want equally spaced wraps going up the hook. You can start to space them out a little bit as you get towards the front. I usually try to give it about 6 or 7 total wraps all the way forward. Just going to wrap right over the top of that. I like to put one wrap, 1 or 2 right in front. Just kind of secures that down. And the reason why I like nano silk so much is you can really put a lot of tension in places like this and really suck whatever material you can right up next to the bead. Just makes a more durable fly. To snip this off, you'll just kind of give it the old helicopter twist. You want to cover up a little bit of an area where you're going to put your rubber legs here. And that just gives you a clean tie-in point. For the legs on this fly, we're going to be using Snake River flies, laser legs, in a golden stone color. They have a ton of different colors here to choose from. Really any color will work. But this just matches the fly a little better, I think. So So rubber legs, there's 1,000 different ways to tie them on. What I like to do is come in right behind the thread and then just kind of wedge it underneath that thread up and over the top. Then I'm not fighting to get the placement on it. I just kind of put it wherever I want. A million different ways to wrap them, but that's the way I found is the easiest. A couple wraps over the top. This end we're going to wrap, or we're going to push over to the other side. Hold that in place. A couple more wraps over the top of that one. And I leave the loop on the front. I don't trim that until the very end. As I'm wrapping the dubbing through here and doing the whip finish, you'll see why. For the thorax, I'm using a Dazzle hare's ear in black color from Spirit River. This stuff's pretty cool. It has antron fibers and hare's ear and squirrel dubbing. It kind of has a cool sheen when it gets wet. It just gives the fly a little more visibility, just a little something extra. What we're looking for here is not a huge clump. I'm going to tie this in with a dubbing loop. So really any excess I can trim off at the end. So it doesn't make a huge difference if you go light or heavy. Just looking for enough to fill in our dubbing loop. So to make that dubbing loop, just pull your thread down. There's a couple different dubbing twisters on the market. This is just what I have. It's what I'm used to tying with, so it's what I like. But you know, there's some out there that spin automatically. This is just the one I'm used to tying with here. So we've got our loop here. We're going to put our dubbing inside that loop. Come in and loosely just kind of place it inside that loop here. I'm going to give it a couple spins. You can kind of grab the stuff and even it out, space it out where you need it. You're just going to twist that up here. So it's similar to actually dubbing the thread, but this kind of lets some of those fibers hang loose a little bit. Just gives it a little more of a buggy effect. You could just dub the thread and wrap through there. I like to put a dubbing loop on here. Pick out some of those fibers here. So we're going to place a couple wraps right there in between those legs. Pull those back legs forward. You're going to put one more right behind them. Another wrap or two in the center there. And we're going to get as close to that bead as we can. One or two wraps, whatever you can fit there. This is where the legs kind of fight you a little bit. They get a little bit in the way. You just have to kind of hold that back with your finger. Now, if I were to have snipped those, I would have had two pieces of rubber legs here to try to get out of the way. In this case, I can just hold them back with my middle finger, go over the top. Same thing, I'll put a wrap or two right in front of that dubbing. And we'll pull that down tight, and that's really going to suck everything right behind the bead, really secure it nicely. Just snip it off as close as you can. With this nano silk, I'm really putting a lot of tension on this to really lock everything in well. Now we're ready for our whip finish. I always like to give my flies 2 whip finishes. I think it makes a better knot at the end of that fly. Rarely use head cement or anything like that. Doing the 2 wraps for doing the 2-whip finishes, it seems my flies usually hold up. Not always, but I rarely have to use head cement if I give it 2-whip finishes. Now we're going to trim our rubber legs. What I like to do is kind of fold these back legs back. Make sure you don't snip your tail. I like to even it out kind of with right at the back of the bend of the hook. I just kind of trim it right there. It's better to leave them a little bit long, and you can trim them off as you need to rather than trimming them too short, and then it just can't add more on. When I trim the front legs, good point of reference, just about a bead width at the front. I just, however wide the bead is, I just kind of eyeball 1 bead width at the front. Snip that off. That is the Dirty Hipster. You can find all the materials at snakeriverfly.com. Check us out on YouTube. Thanks for watching.